Once again, welcome everybody. Welcome to the Get Real with AI webinar series brought to you by ActiveOps. Today's topic is all about data. In data we don't trust, and how it's kind of hindering the adoption of AI. And we'll be discussing how we can break some of those barriers down so we can move forward with the adoption of AI within operations. But before I jump into that, let's first make some quick introductions. First of all, my name is Bhavesh Vaghela. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer here at ActiveOps, and I'm delighted to be your host for today's webinar. Alongside with me, I've got my colleague, Tom Bradley. Tom, I'll just get you to introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name's Tom. I am an analyst here at ActiveOps. So I've been working with the data that we've got from our global research, and I'll be going through a small presentation that looks at the findings for EMEIA when it comes to those research results.
Fantastic, thanks, Tom. Now, once Tom has been through some of the data from the research, we've assembled a fantastic panel, a fantastic group of panelists who are existing practitioners, what we'd call ops game changers, who are going through this journey themselves within their own organizations or supporting other organizations around the world. So let me just introduce the panelists to you. First of all, we've got Ben McManus, who's based in the UK and is from Fidelity International. So welcome, Ben.
Thanks, Bhavesh. Great to be here. So I look after a team at Fidelity International under the CAO function, and we take care of everything performance and planning. So that's tactical planning, long-term planning, headcounts, budgets, and all of those kind of things.
Fantastic. Thanks, Ben. And over in South Africa, we've got Kireshnie Govender, who's head of operations at SBV. So welcome, Kireshnie.
Thank you, Bhavesh, and good afternoon to all. So I'm Kireshnie Govender. My professional career lies majority of my time in the financial sector in South Africa, currently in operations, so end-to-end operations management from processing to logistics in the organization, and a core fundamental around people and people growth and people management in the South African context. Thanks, Bhavesh.
Thank you, Kireshnie. And then finally, we've got Dan Carroll, who's the CTO of Xcentuate. Dan is typically normally based in Ireland, but today is in Spain. So welcome, Dan.
Thank you, Bhavesh, and good morning, everybody. So just to give you a little bit about myself, so I'm the Chief Technical Officer of Xcentuate. So we've been the Irish implementation partner of ActiveOps, and we've been, I suppose, helping organizations around the world get better operational insight using ActiveOps for a number of years. But we also help clients with automation, digitization of their processes, removing paper, using robotics, and helping drive data insight. And we've been doing that for a long time. My own background is actuarial, so I suppose when it comes to getting data, that's where I cut my cloth. Cut my teeth to start with, was helping people get insight, be it on the financial side and later in my career then on the operational side.
Thank you, Dan. So we've got a fantastic set of panelists that we're going to discuss this whole idea of data and the challenges around data and how we can kind of break those barriers in order to adopt the next wave. So before we jump into that, so let's just kind of set the scene. If you think about where we are in terms of operations, and we're all operations folks on the call, we're kind of entering this next wave, right, in terms of ops, where this next wave will be very much driven by AI or dominated by AI. And, you know, if that's the case, the future of ops looks like an environment where there's a lot more automation, obviously, and that's one of the biggest drivers from an AI perspective. But in order for that to happen, or as a side result of that, we'll end up with less people. So that's the kind of trajectory, and that's the direction that we know from our digitization strategies, our transformation exercises that are going on within our own organizations, that's the direction of travel that we're trying to go through, and that's what our businesses expect. Now, in order to achieve any of those things, however, the whole idea of data becomes incredibly critical. AI needs data in order to drive the changes that it can do. So data needs, the data we're going to be using is going to need to be incredibly smart. It's going to need to be accurate. It's going to need to be highly predictive. And therefore, the element of or the key foundational layer for the future of operations is the data that we have and how we use the data more effectively. So the next question we have to ask ourselves is, where are we in terms of an operations function in adopting data? How good are we at using data? How effective are we at using data? And are we well placed in order to start adopting AI within the functions that we operate within? A very simple kind of maturity here. I mean, everybody wants to be on the right-hand side, where we're a transformed operations environment, where of course AI is realized, where automation is the norm, and we're actually, moving beyond just the kind of diagnostic data and descriptive data, but we're moving much more towards predictive and prescriptive and next best action and all those kind of things. But on the other side of this maturity, we've got this quagmire of a mess between manual data drudgery and death by dashboards, and lots of spreadsheets around. And I'm sure everybody in on this call has got this Uber spreadsheet somewhere sitting within operations that somebody's built that's kind of brought data together. There's disagreements about accuracy. There's disagreements about definitions, and that's the kind of world that we perhaps were in from an operations point of view. So from an ActiveOps point of view, we're trying to understand, where are we? How far are we from an ops perspective? And that's the reason why we commissioned our global research, looking at the current state of play within operations in terms of adoption of AI, as well as adoption of data, or better usage of data. So in order to kind of share some of those findings with you, I'm going to ask Tom to spend a few minutes just to go through some of the initial sets of findings from the EMEIA marketplace. Over to you, Tom.
Thanks, Bhavesh. So as Bhavesh has said, we have been concentrating on ensuring that this research is out there in the field, looking at data maturity and AI adoption for operations teams within both financial services and within healthcare. So we surveyed, I think it was 850 or just over 850 different ops leaders across 7 different countries, 3 of those being in EMEIA, so South Africa, the UK and Ireland. And from that research and from that survey, we then created this global research report, which is available at activeops.com/global research, or there is now a link within the chat if you do want to download and don't already have a copy. Within this research, we've got sort of 3 main themes that we wanted to pull out, particularly for this webinar, about AI in particular and ops leaders' thoughts on AI and adoption itself. What's stopping AI adoption within service operations in financial services in particular, and then the data challenges that those ops leaders feel they're facing on a day-to-day on a day-to-day basis. So when we look at AI in general, we can see here that sort of 9 in 10 of the ops leaders that we surveyed within EMEIA believe that the adoption of AI would improve customer experience, employee engagement, and effective decision making. And those numbers are well above 90% when it comes to South Africa and Ireland, showing that the belief in what AI can do and what it can achieve is clearly there. However, you've got 3 in 5 of the respondents that are only just starting out with AI or are not using it at all. That number's slightly lower in the UK, slightly higher in South Africa, and about average in Ireland. So it's showing that despite the understanding that AI will help to improve these parts of the business, the ops leaders themselves only feel that they're starting out, or the large proportion of them only feel that they're starting out with AI. So what's stopping those barriers to adoption? 3 in 10, about a third, believe that the adoption will produce those deeper, more meaningful insights as well. So it'll improve these functions within the sector. It will produce deeper and more meaningful insights. But what's stopping that adoption? When we looked at this, about half of the leaders are concerned about job displacement. That number is really dragged up through South Africa and through Ireland, where the number is the highest that it can be globally. So you've got 65% of people concerned about job displacement in South Africa, 62% in Ireland. So there's a real concern about it just replacing workforces, but we really believe that it will be something that supports rather than replaces. As well as this, you've then got 61%, 3 in 5 people that believe that service operations teams don't get the necessary support from other areas of the business, and they don't believe they have the right data skills either. So there's this worry that without the support there around AI, if they bring it in, then there's not going to be the right level of support there within the business. And also, is the education there within the business as well? And through those things, there's then this concern of, well, if the data skills aren't there, am I just going to lose my job and be replaced by AI? And we don't believe that is the case. As well as this, these barriers to stopping AI adoption, you've then got data challenges that are there as well. So just under half of these ops leaders in EMEIA believe that the data used is siloed and inconsistent, or there's just too much data to enable efficient decision-making and effective decision-making. As Bhavesh says, is there a spreadsheet out there that just has all the data in? Too hard to break down? Is it just like looking at the matrix? You then got this level of effort that senior managers of operations feel they need to go to just to gain insights. So that level of manual data drudgery taking place. Within Ireland, that's 100%, and within South Africa, it's 97%, so not too far off. The number slightly lower in the UK, but still that level of manual effort going in to gain those insights could be easily removed if there was an AI there to make those more efficient decisions. But perhaps the most concerning thing is the level of real-time data that's being used. So we've got these levels here of real-time data. 94% of people are not using real-time data. They're using data that is around a week to a month old, if not older than that. So there's these concerning points around the data there, the AI adoption barriers that are there, but the belief that that AI will enable more efficient decisions along the way. So in summary, there's that optimism there, the fear of adoption due to the lack of support, and then the data challenges that are holding ops teams back.
Great, thank you, Tom. So before we get the panelists back on to discuss what we've just heard, for anybody that's on the webinar, if you want to pose a question to us, please just put it into chat, and we'll try and bring that to the audience and to the panelists. So let's welcome Ben, Kireshnie, and Dan back onto the webinar itself. So welcome, guys. So when we look at that data set, it kind of makes you think that most of us, as in most of operations in EMEIA, are sitting on the left-hand side of that maturity. We've got a long, long way to go before we're able to adopt or bring in the kind of benefits that AI could bring in terms of operations. I mean, perhaps Ben, I can start with you. Does that resonate with you? Did any of that surprise you? Is that something that you've seen within the journey that you've been on?
It does surprise me, but I also can understand where people are coming from. So, 2 years ago when we started out, we were very much on that left-hand side, and I'd probably honestly say we're somewhere around the middle to the right-hand side, but not completely on the right-hand side. And we had to go through a huge amount of effort to be able to centralize our data. We had processes and different orchestration tools all around the different parts of the organization, and we really had to bring that all together. So there was a huge amount of effort, a huge amount of investment that we had to put in place in order to do that. Now that we're on the other side of that, we're really starting to be able to see the benefits, and we are kicking off a lot of AI work ourselves. Yeah,
so we can delve into a little bit more about some of your recommendations as we go through this discussion. But perhaps I can turn to you, Kireshnie. I mean, some of the South African numbers seem quite alarming there. I mean, is that something that that you recognise within within your own organisation?
Yeah. So I think, Bhavesh, some great insights shared by Tom. Overall, I noted 60% or greater than 60% is reflecting 3 key themes, job displacement, support, and levels of skill. So in essence, I think it doesn't surprise me if we zoom out from a South African context, because of the unemployment rates, because, employees will continue to be concerned, is technology going to replace, what I currently have? So I think from that perspective now, I think some of the data doesn't surprise me. but it also is around, from an internal organization perspective, I think, it's questioning, are we adequately prepared, focused on the opportunities it brings to business, and the insights around growth. So for me, I think it's more around our focus from an organization perspective is not displacement, it's more repurposing for more meaningful tasks. And how do we drive that as a business? From an operations perspective, it is imperative to recognize that operations cannot, evaluate itself in isolation. It is really an orchestration of all the different business units that culminates into an integrated value chain. So I think the question for me is really are we really leveraging the benefits in terms of preparing our employees for that future context? And I think although we prepare ourselves, are we really doing enough? So I think great insights. Doesn't surprise me though, but you've got to look at it holistically from a country perspective and also internally into an organization view as well.
Yeah, totally. What about yourself, Dan? What's the Irish view on this? I think you're on mute, Dan, by the way.
Yeah, thanks, Bhavesh. I think the bit around the fear of AI is not unexpected. I think a lot of the media coverage has been given up to, what's going to happen to jobs, what's going to happen. But like Tom said, I think there's a belief there that it'll just change the nature of work. There are jobs that are going to exist that we don't envisage today. There's roles that are going to be doing things that where if you take, say, the typical MI role today is probably taking data from one thing and plugging it into a spreadsheet to go on a dashboard. That role will change to someone that's analyzing using AI to deliver insights as opposed to just the manual nature, just moving data across. I think we're seeing a lot of companies that are starting to use AI. So they're using it through their partners, like if they're an ActiveOps customer, they'll be using it that way. Their workload providers will have something, or whoever they use for their chatbot. So they're starting to see AI come in, but it's actually disjointed, it's in different places. So there's not a holistic view of what AI can do for the business. And I think the bit where we're focused today is on the data side. I think that's left behind. I think people have looked, and they'll start with revenue. They're starting at revenue. What will it do from a marketing point of view? What can it do from a customer, that touch point from a customer to sell them something? So they're looking at it from sales. The little bit that shows up that ops get forgotten a little bit in the IT. I think the bits where it'll help drive improvement to ops are probably at the back end of the list of things to do, because it will be focused on revenue to start with. But what gets lost there is, by investing in ops, what can that do to your customer service? What can that do to how you do that complex work, be it underwriting, be it financial crime, fraud analysis today, and how that can be driven to a new level. So, but I think also the way around, it's the doing, or using AI to the doing rather than the insight bit. And I think it's the insight bit that will be really, really exciting from an ops perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really interesting, because when you think about it, if we delve it down into the data bit, then as you just described it, Dan, I mean, what's your view? Why do you think operations are struggling so much with their data?
I think there's a couple of reasons behind it. One is that they've got a lot of data, but it's all over the place. It's buried in different systems. It's in core systems. It's in a multitude of workflow systems. It's in underwriting systems, and it's all different. And when it gets brought together in some dashboards, they're not necessarily consistent. So we're trying to compare apples, pears, oranges, different types, rather than having things in a common language so they're consistent. I think what you can do is you'll see that a light goes off to say that there's an issue, but to actually get to know about what's really going on in that area or what's causing that service issue takes a lot of digging, a lot of analysis, and a lot of work to get to that. So the bit around real time really comes to the fore there. I might see it as an issue and see that reasonably quickly, but how can I get to what's really going on there? Is it a resource issue? Is it a quality issue? Is it a training issue? They can struggle to get to the nub of that really, really quickly,
Yeah, and I think, it kind of points me to perhaps your journey, Ben. I mean, when you first started in the journey with Fidelity, you were using data that was pretty old, and secondly, data was all over the place. I mean, when you step back to the early days, why do you think you were in that position? What was the struggles?
A lot of what Dan just said rang true, I think. So, we had lots of different silos of people doing fantastic work, but it was all in different places. And really the power of this, bringing it together, seeing it at that holistic view is the bit that won for us. giving the information to the top of the organization so that they can make those prioritization calls and pass it down, has been really helpful. But it does come back to that trust, and it's something to do with the proximity of the people who are experiencing the day-to-day of operations and owning their data. And I think the relationship that we've got to that is, it's a very emotional one of, how busy were you if it's a resource challenge? How come you made so many errors and mistakes if it's a quality challenge? But the taking away from that kind of emotional experience of it and presenting logical, data-driven insights to them, that being able to be aggregated up through the organization is the thing that's really changed it for us.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and that trust thing is very interesting. And I think, Kireshnie, from your perspective, I know you've been through a very similar journey where you've become much more data centric as an organization. But going back to the early days of that transformation, I mean, trust, was that an issue for you guys in terms of the data that you had and trying to convince people that this was an important thing to do?
Yeah, Bhavesh, I think if we just take it back to, we recognize when COVID happened, right? It really accelerated our need even more for data automation and data-led decision making, especially in the cash and the financial industry, and that need for predictive analysis as we changed operating models in a very difficult time. But what we found was there was large amounts of data, but were we getting the insights out of it? And what was that decisions was key. And working through that, some of those challenges around the data was manual interventions. How much of that was manual capturing by teams? Organizations are still sitting, and we were still sitting with outdated, underutilized technology stacks. Lack of integration capability. So does it lead to that single source of truth? Time spent on gathering that data and the quality of data was really starting to be, questioned. Can we use it from an insights perspective? So we spent a lot of time as an organization around making sure the data quality, data availability was coming through as one single source. How do we remove that manual capturing so we can trust the data? Because from an employee base, our employees are not trying to question. Yes, but if there's manual capturing, there's always going to be manipulation of data. But if it's system driven, then that comes through quite nicely around the integrity of data. So it is that continuous, evaluation around the integrity of the data, the trust of the data, but also is our systems talking to each other, and are we doing enough around that piece there? And I think from even our organization, the importance of data protection and privacy in the financial sector from an SPV world, if our data is not correct, it can lead to massive breaches, penalties, etc., and life-threatening risk to our teams as well. So the importance of that was so much more, profound over that period of time. But linking back to why didn't teams trust data and what we needed to do to pivot differently in preparation of that.
Yeah, it's, I think one of the things that came out of research, which I found quite interesting, was whether the ops teams themselves have the right skill set to be able to, adopt data more effectively. Because, we've all seen ops teams where you've got spreadsheets and post-it notes and all different ways of capturing data, and obviously things are moving at some pace. And I was quite interested from your perspective, Dan, because you obviously Xcentuate engages with multiple customers. Do you find that ops teams are so I'd say the makeup of an operations function and a team is now changing, so it brings in these type of skills that you need, or is that still a way to go?
I think for most, it's probably still a way to go. I think what you do find in it, though, when you start working with teams, is there is lots of people with the capabilities to do it, but they're caught doing basic tasks. You know what I mean? They're caught, like I said, an MI person's employed that can, with a bit of support, with a bit of training, can really develop that end of their skill set. But they're producing manual spreadsheets, and they're spending their time validating data and pulling it together, and that leads to delays that come out in it, is because that takes so long. If you can automate and that comes through, then they're spending the insight. So it's not necessarily that they have a skills gap, but they have you know, where are they investing their effort today and how did they transform that? Some organizations will hit that they won't have it, you know, especially smaller organizations won't necessarily, and that's where they can, you know, get in some external support on a part-time basis or bring in someone new to do it. You know, there's ways to go there. But I do feel that most of them, you know, most of the organizations when I've gone in and worked in, there are good people that can do it, but they're spending their time in what I'd call drudge work of, you know, it needs someone that understands data and can do it. But, you know, if you know, they're solving the same problem every month. That if that was automated, well, then that's done, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess, you know, it's, you know, it'd be great to get your view, Ben, and Kireshnie's view on this, because you've been through the journey or you're in that point. Did you have to change the makeup of your team in order to go on the journey that you've had, or bring in different resources into ops to support that? Maybe I can ask you, Ben, first from your perspective, whether that had to change from your end.
Yeah, so I was really fortunate. I've got a great team around me who have the data planning kind of experience, and that was something I really targeted. So before we even started this entire journey, you know, I had to build that team up. So I was lucky enough to be able to bring some really experienced guys in. But we've had to, you know, as we've taken on more responsibility and got more and more, and we've had to find the right people around the organization and external to be able to bring in. And that's continuing to grow. And I think the investment in, you know, that's probably one of the biggest things in this, is making sure that you're surrounded by, you know, the right kind of skills and people. And it isn't just in the data, it's in, you know, the architecture and the technology teams. It's all around the business, and bringing everyone together who understands, you know, the problem statement that we're all trying to go after. But it goes to the leadership as well. You know, how many times have, you know, through your career, have you been prescribed how something is going to be delivered to them? Whereas actually there's probably a more efficient way of doing it. And we're really fortunate that, you know, our leadership teams are open to, you know, trialing things and being presented things in a new, different way. So, yeah, we've been very fortunate, but yes, we've had to bring in the right skill set to support.
What about yourself, Kireshnie, in the journey you've been on? Have you seen a different makeup of a team now from when you started?
I think blended, Bhavesh. So, you know, a little bit of skill set around new and in, you know, from an integration side and how do we connect the systems. But from a core perspective, it was also spending some time around upskilling the teams around, you know, how do they plan? How do they use the insights? Are we using it effectively? And what we often find is we think we have the answers as leadership, but sometimes the teams on the ground, from an operations perspective, even can, you know, tell you where we're going wrong and where are some of those gaps. So I think it's important to also ensure that we stay connected to what's happening on the ground and understanding where some of the real pain points from a people perspective that is hindering them from those, you know, next level engagements or the next level planning and their role, you know, getting rid of those mundane mandatory tasks. So I think blended, but definitely around how do we pull systems together? And, you know, in our world, our teams always keep us honest to that around, are we integrated enough? Are we doing enough from a systems point of view? So I think there's always going to be that skill set we need to ensure that we are keeping abreast with and we're bringing in new. But there's also an investment that needs to happen from a leadership perspective around us with the teams on the ground and making sure that we continuously evolving that. And even now with our journey, you know, and our maturity journey with ActiveOps, we're looking at how do we refresh and refresh programs with the teams and ensuring that we continuously upskill and evolve the teams from that perspective as well.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point. It's not really just about the skills of data, really. It's also, as you mentioned, Ben, as well, about the integrations, right? Because, you know, if you're going to drive automation, you've got to integrate. The data's got to flow. You've got to reduce manual handovers. It's got to be seamless. And that's where AI can really add value. When you get to that point, you can't add value before that. So, you know, you are, you know, going back to one of the stats from the research where people were talking about they don't have necessarily support from around the business. That support from around the business is from the likes of the IT functions and perhaps other parts of the business, which I guess from your perspective, Ben, you came from the CIO function. So it's already a kind of a blended role to start with, wasn't it?
Well, I actually came, so when we started this out, we were in I was in the operational teams. So it was actually a different journey than most kind of strategic projects would naturally come from. So I was coming up with this problem statement from operations, and you know, having to present that to the wider business and get the buy-in from the other teams. So it was a little bit different. But now that we're in the CAO function, we're really close to the strategy and the planning elements of it. So the big problem statements of that we're trying to solve, whether it be cost, whether it be technology, whether it be the digital elements, you know, we're very close to that. But you know, you're right. You need to build all of the right skill sets around the business, so it's a shared problem statement across everyone, because you know we're all, you know, fall foul to prioritizations, and you know, there's something else that the business is trying to solve for. So it's about building the business case, understanding the benefits case that's surrounding that, and getting the right buy-in. Yeah,
you know, I think if the data that we shared from the research could, you know, if we summarize that, then we do have quite, as ops functions globally, we have a long way to go in terms of getting ourselves in a position to really start adopting the power of what AI is going to be enable us to do. So perhaps if we kind of switch gears a little bit and then, you know, have a discussion around how we break those barriers down. So what can we be doing to kind of move us through those maturity stages? So perhaps Dan, you know, what are your thoughts on perhaps kind of 2 or 3 tips that you would give, you know, when you're talking, you know, when you're typically talking to customers, on how you can help them go through from one stage to the next?
Yeah, I think the old adage of transformations is a journey. It's not that you're going to embark at something and it'll be done in 6 or 12 months. It's something you're going to go on a journey on. And if you take that, it's really start to bring, like Ben said, start bringing stuff together. You know, let's start bringing the data we have together, using automation to automate the manual bits. Because if someone's taking data, putting it into and transforming that each month or each week, you can have a robot do it if the system can't provide it to you. I think that's number one. Start bringing data together. Take what you've got to start with, and then you can build from there and build on data sets as it goes. The second bit is identify where your gaps are. So what are the things that you're not getting inside on? You know, have you got gaps in capacity information? Have you got financial information that's not coming across that you can compare to? So where are your gaps, and start building a plan to start filling out those gaps, because that can take a bit of time and a bit of investment to do that, you know? So it could be a workflow system that can't give you the data you need. Well, is there a way around that? Is there something that we can work with our workflow providers to get that data transformed and get us with it? So the second thing is identify those big gaps you have and start looking at solutions to do that. And as I said, I touched on it before, I think it's the level of automation. So, you know, we look in robotics as how it can remove a step in a process from servicing a customer. But actually, I think where it can be really powerful is on the AI side. So moving data from one thing to another, where it's not possible, moving it, transforming it, I think using those. So those 3 things for me is get going on the journey. You won't get there in 12 months. It is going to take a couple of years to get there. But as soon as you get on it and you start bringing things together, you will start to see that insight come through. You will start to see benefits. And I think then you've got a foundation that's ready for when the AI, you know, as AI develops into things like Power BI and things like that, that's going to even be more powerful than what we've got today. At least you've got the data brought together to be able to enable that.
Yeah, that's a very sound set of steps there. I guess, Kireshnie, from your perspective, I mean, in hindsight, the journey you've been on, what would be your advice to people if you were talking to somebody and they're asking for your thoughts on what would you do in order to move down this path? What would you say are your top 3 things?
I think addressing the data problem effectively involves a combination of strategic and tactical implementation. You've got to be deliberate about the journey. You know, it's understanding the how it plays into the organization strategy, but also prioritization. You know, before I go into those 3 steps, because if the organization is not in sync from an IT team to an ops team to an HR team, and we're not deliberate about that prioritization, I think that's where we lag a lot more and we frustrate the system. So I think those 3 things for me is really define clear data, governance policies and a robust data quality control mechanism. Because if your data is right, and if you're spending time around what you're putting in, the quality of what you get out is going to be absolutely valuable. I think the second one is integrated systems. So be, again, deliberate about that single source of information, ensuring all your systems are speaking to each other, and therefore eliminating the frustrations of manual processes. And last one for me, I think, which is powerful in any operations teams is the promotion of training and upskilling. If we foster a culture where employees understand the importance of why we're doing what we're doing, and the growth that it doesn't only bring to individuals, but to the broader organization, you've got them on board. And once they're on board, the ultimate benefits of that is absolute organizational growth and individual growth. And there you've won them, So I think by focusing on those particular areas, we can really lay a solid foundation around how we derive maximum value for not just the organization, but I think for employee growth as well.
So it sounds, those all make absolute sense. I guess one of the things I would perhaps probe a little bit more deeper with you, Kireshnie, is, that first bit about making sure the organization was aligned. That sometimes is pretty challenging, right, in a large organization. So from your perspective, how did it work for you guys? What was the kind of triggers around that?
Yeah, I think it was us sitting collectively as a team. So I think most importantly, there'll always be friction points. There'll always be different levels of prioritization, but it's also the leadership sitting together to say, what is really going to move us forward and propel us forward in the organization? And we know data insights and is going to really leapfrog us forward from a customer perspective, because customers now also want data. Employees want to be able to plan effectively, or managers and supervisors and HODs want to plan effectively around what next week, next month's going to look like, and how do we remove all of that grudge work against doing that, where they just need to focus on what are the insights telling me and how do I need to manage it. So I think what was key was, taking me back to what your question was what was key was us sitting together as a collective leadership team and really understanding prioritization and starting to challenge each other as leadership around how do we make this work as a team? Because we know this is where organizations are moving to. This is really what's going to lead us to the future. And how do we prioritize that up front? So really, one of our core strategic pillars is activating through technology. We deliberate about it. So I think it's also making sure that that's seamless across the organization, being deliberate about integration and activating through technology.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think it's very similar to what you've been through, Ben. I think from a Fidelity perspective. One of the things, if I remember when we spoke, you were talking about, getting the buy-in of the staff and making sure data becomes part of the culture. And that's been a big, I would say a win for you guys. Perhaps talk a little bit about your 3 tips, but, perhaps kind of dwell on something like that as well.
Yeah, then that was actually one of them. So there was my third one. So it was around, building that culture, taking people along the journey with you. If you understand the opportunity statement and they understand it, a lot of what Kireshnie said rang true as well. It's taking people on the journey with you, giving them the skill set to point the technology teams and the improvement teams in the right direction to solve the problems for our customers, because that's what we're all here to do. You'll really go after the right things and add value. But for us, we went through huge cultural change, and I think that's probably one of the biggest things that everyone has to understand that you have to go through. Bringing the tools to people isn't going to solve the problem. It's giving them the right conditions to be able to work within, give them the right training, as Kireshnie said, and let them run with it. And as long as that kind of feedback loop happens all the time, so that we're constantly improving on it, I think it will be successful. So that was kind of my third one. So bringing people on the journey with you. I think the other one is probably more around how we rolled this out for ourselves, but this goes wider. So if you think back to this, always rings true to the automation journey that I think we've been on. So a lot of the figures and the findings that you had in your data sheet, it just rang true to me. It's the same as the automation stuff. People feel like they're going to be displaced. So how did we solve that problem? We took them on the journey, and we made them feel part of it. And they were given up other opportunities. But with AI, it's not like automation where you're trying to deal with a time and a speed and a simplicity problem statement. Actually, it's complexity that we're now going after. So we found this in the planning space. So you're now giving somebody a plan with ActiveOps' smart plan that's just as good as the best team leader within that team, and that's a huge opportunity. And if you can apply those kind of same principles across other problem statements, I look up at my bookshelf up here, and if I was doing process improvement, I have to sit through reams and reams and reams and remind myself of this whole how to do all the process improvement steps. But if you've got AI that has all that knowledge and that can retain all that information and present you with the top 3 findings or the top 3 suggestions, and then you can make that personal interpretation, I think that's where it's going to bring extreme value to everyone.
Yeah, I think it's a good segue to now start thinking about the AI question, right? I mean, we've got if we break down the barriers of using data more effectively, then the way I think about AI personally is there's, from an operations point of view, there's kind of 3 buckets where people are looking at AI. Bucket number 1 is people are thinking about automating, so to automate the process itself. The second kind of category of AI is improving the individual productivity. So I'm thinking there of the kind of co-pilot type stuff from Microsoft and your notes and all that kind of stuff. And to a certain degree, some stuff you were talking about there, Ben. And then the third element is supporting the decision making, right? So we're all making decisions, strategic and tactical. How can we, leverage AI to support that? And when we see the kind of direction, a lot of people are driven towards the automation, making process more effective, a little bit on the individual side, but actually the decision-making one's a really interesting use case to try and improve that. From your perspective, and perhaps I'll start with, again, Dan, yourself. In terms of AI then, what have you seen in terms of organizations, where they're starting? What's the kind of starting point?
Yeah, I think most organizations aren't looking at the management bit, to be fair. Yeah. I think they're starting the automation. I think there's a lot of, I think their managers are struggling with data, being able to tell their story, being able to see what's going on. AI can really free up a lot of management time, to be able to produce the insights and produce the data that says, here's what's happening in your world. And that, because what you'll have with a manager to date is they know instinctively what's going on, but to have the data to support that in a data-led argument is really, really powerful. So I think the advice I'd give to organizations is start on that data journey and really look at what AI can bring you in that space, because I think that's massive. Even from an ActiveOps point of view, with the new skills bits coming, being able to talk through exactly the cost of bringing someone up to speed or getting them to the necessary level and how long that's going to take. That's massive to be able to. Most organizations can't describe that fully today, but to be able to talk through that for different types of teams, you'll have administrative teams up to the more complex, which might be underwriting or fraud teams, you know what I mean? So I think being able to give managers the tools, like Ben touched on, free them up from producing the plans to actually spend the time on the so what, so how do we move the dial of where our managers are spending it? And I think what you'll find in as well is, we talked a bit about capabilities earlier. I think we've a lot of organizations that have gaps in their capabilities of management, so you have managers that are used to, they love dealing in the complex cases and they're very good with customer, or they're very good at intuition, but don't really want to do the graft and see the value in data. And I think what you really need going forward are managers that are really good with data and are using data to manage and analyze their business, because I think they can bring really, really strong results.
Yeah, and we've got some great questions actually coming through on the chat, so which is all around the AI component. One of them is, what do you think it will be the hardest part for you in adopting AI fully in operation? So I guess perhaps to Ben and Kireshnie then, I mean, you're to a certain degree quite mature in the data journey. So I know you're experimenting with AI and starting putting AI into your organizations. What's the hardest part of adopting it? and what's the journey you've seen? What's been difficult? Perhaps Ben, I can start with you.
Yeah, it does go back to that trust thing. So it's, you're presenting someone with a new way of thinking, a new way of working, so that they can focus on having conversations with their teams rather than doing, building plans, their head in spreadsheets. So building the trust, the understanding that, over a period of time, what is the accuracy of the plans are being produced or the work output, and it just comes with that over time. People will realize that actually this does work, and if it doesn't, then you have to make those improvements so that it does work. And once you find that, I think they can put that to bed, and they can move on to having conversations with their teams that they should be doing really, and solving other problems.
Yeah, and I think AI always is about trust. I think normally when I know when you first put AI in, people don't believe it, and they'll go back through it and they'll rework it themselves until they get familiar and trust the data that's coming out, and then before you know it, they're just using the AI over time. So it is a journey that you can't just stick it in and it's going to work. So I think that's definitely a very good point.
We'll probably see that effort profile across most things that we put AI into. I think the QA space is going to be kind of the filter before it is released to our customers or released to the real world. So we're going to see that effort go from actually processing to moving into that QA space. Does it capture the right sentiment of the organization? Are we retraining the models? All of those those things are going to be really important.
Yeah, totally. But what about yourself, Kireshnie? What's the AI journey looking like at SBV?
Yeah, I think similar to also, what Ben shared, it's we have been deliberate looking at some of these items, and from a predictive analysis, insights, specifically insights, when we're spending our time even with ActiveOps is how do we equip our managers around ensuring they get insights and we can free them up for engagements and conversations with teams and making sure the culture of the organization is also in a good space. I think from an AI perspective, we know it enables the teams to analyze large volumes of data, the machine learning, the algorithms, the predictive analysis. But really where we find the teams wanting to spend their time is that trust. What does the predictive analysis say? Can I trust it? Because some of where we have legacy teams is, I know better. I've done this before. I've planned it. And it's now, am I able to trust this data to make that level of decision making for me? And where we're shifting the teams is being able to trust the data that you're getting out of that. But what it is, it's not going to take away your insights. It's not going to take away your overlaying of risk management or, unforeseen, unplanned events. And that's where your level of expertise needs to come in. So I think it's taking the teams on the journey of trusting that data. And a big component, as I've shared before, is that training and that upskilling to get the teams to be able to get to that point of trusting that data.
Yeah, and I'm curious to understand a little bit about how we identify the right areas to start with AI. Dan, have you seen examples within customers that you engage with where there's some obvious places to start with AI? Obviously, automation is one very clear one. Have you seen some quick wins?
Look, I think the easy places to start is the automate. Like if you take, say, in most organizations with workflow, they'll have a lot of people indexing work. It's fairly straightforward. Recognize something. Who's this customer? Is that a claim? Is it a new business application? What is it? AI can do that really quickly, really easily. It's low risk. It'll move it on and someone's going to see it. So for me, that's an easy adoption to see it. I think the other one that's really been looked at now and companies are really starting to make inroads is we've a lot of people that do complex analysis of lots and lots of documents. We won't have the AI make the decision or do it, but what they can do is consolidate really large amount of documents and take those processes that were taking hours or days to do down into sub 1 hour time, because the data is extracted and combined and saying, look, this is inconsistent with this or this, so that the person with the skill to look at it can look at a much condensed data set to do it. So I think they're the easy ones to start, and I guess start with so if you're well, that's going to be an easier one to make a business case than something that's working reasonably well, or for a lot of companies, you're not going to the AI yourself. You're going to get it. Like if you have ActiveOps, you get AI components in that. If you've got a workflow, be it, you're going to get AI components in that. So I think it's working with your vendors. Where is your biggest issue? A system needs to be upgraded or something needs to be done, and then you can bring in the AI as part of that.
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, it is all about, the whole title of this webinar is about getting real with AI, right? There's so much hype around AI and how you bring these point solutions to solve particular problems. From your perspective, Ben, I mean, which are the kind of areas that you're looking at in terms of bringing some of this AI capability?
Yeah, so my team currently we're using it in our planning areas. We're going to be starting to try and utilize it in our data analytics as well. But I know there's teams in the organization that are looking at the problem statements wider, so in the resolution space, in our client services space. So touched on a lot of what Dan was kind of saying. And I think the opportunity really is when you are building that business case, you have to structure it in a way that you're really delivering value quickly. So a lot of those kind of automation opportunities, going in on some quick wins, I think is going to be able to build the momentum in that snowball effect. When you can then start looking into the much more complex spaces, like Dan mentioned as well, underwriting, we're looking at those kind of resolution spaces, the things that take reams and reams and reams of information and time and deep thought from highly skilled individuals. I think that's where you're going to see the most value. But it's starting off on the building blocks and getting the buy-in early by some of those quick wins. And it might even be that you revisit some of your automation where you're getting 60 to 70% success rates and the rest are exceptions, reviewing that so that you're getting closer to 90, 95. That would be a big success, and it would be probably quite easy to go after.
Fantastic. Well, listen, we're coming to the top of the hour, so I'm just going to pose one quick question to all three of you as your final remarks on this. From your perspective, how confident do you feel that using AI within your operations environment will drive the business changes that you're looking for? Perhaps I can start with you, Kireshnie. What's your view?
Yeah, so I think it's really an exciting journey. I think overall AI and decision intelligence empowers operations really to harness data, automation, and predictive capabilities to optimize in our space specifically processes. There's always going to be continuous management from a cost perspective, but the exciting pieces are really around enhancing customer satisfaction and building and driving sustainable growth. And I think that's where we at from an organization point of view is how do we ensure that, financial sector is always being challenged. We look at the mundane tasks in our spaces. That's the one that's most challenged. That's the one that those repetitive tasks are always looked at from an AI point of view. So integrating AI into in the operation strategy requires careful planning and investment, and yields. We know from that perspective it's going to yield long-term benefits, but it's really around being deliberate about driving it to position us from a competitive play point of view as well. Bhavesh.
Fantastic. Ben, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think pointed in the right direction, then I think it's going to add a lot of value to the different teams. I think if we try and point it towards too many things, I think we could dilute the opportunity. So I think it's about being really deliberate within how we use with the AI capability.
Great. And Dan?
Yeah, I think at the heart of everything we do, it's for a customer. It's to make that customer experience better. And I think the ability of AI to remove, to really accelerate that automation journey, but also to give us insight that help us understand where we've a breakage or something not working. How can we resolve that quicker? What do we need to do? Or like you said, like Ben touched on the predictive bit, we can see that we've an issue coming. It's starting to build now. It's not red, but we can see it's going to be red in 6 weeks. How can we get ahead of that and do something about it? So for me, that's the really powerful thing, that the ability to make the customer experience that much better is going to be really, really powerful.
Yeah, no, fantastic. Well, listen, guys, thank you so much for sharing your insights and comments. It's been a fascinating discussion. I think there's if we think about the summary of what we've discussed, and when we go back to that maturity curve, what we're really saying from the data that we got from the global research, but the discussion that we've had here is we are, as ops, optimistic about the power of what AI is going to enable us to do, but we've got a lot of work to do in order to make sure our data is in a good place in order to capitalize on that, right? And we have to move away from the drudgery and the dashboards into moving towards transformation organizations. But the optimism is there, the use cases are there. With bringing people along the journey, it's not about replacing, it's about supporting. So there's lots of things that, the direction of where we're going with ops, this next wave will be AI and data driven. So just a quick thing for anybody on the chat, if you haven't downloaded the paper, feel free to do that. The link is on the slide, but it's also in the chat. The paper covers all the countries that we had the data for, goes into a lot more detail than Tom was able to share, obviously, in a very short period of time. The other thing to kind of point out is at ActiveOps, we have our annual customer conference, which is called Capacity 24, in London on the 10th of October. Unsurprisingly, this year it's all about data insights, a great mix of content from industry experts, as well as great use cases of where you can use AI more effectively to drive better decision making within your organization. So if you're interested, please jump onto the website and register. We look forward to seeing you there. So finally, what it remains me to say is a big thank you to Ben, Kireshnie and Dan for sharing your real world examples and your opinions and your tips to the audience. And thank you so much for taking the time to join us on this webinar. Finally, to everybody that's joined live, thank you very much for jumping on the call, and it will be available on demand afterwards. And of course, finally, if you're interested in any more about AI, please do follow us across all the usual channels. We have lots of content on LinkedIn, X, Instagram, and on YouTube. So thank you all very much, and I hope you found the session useful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Bhavesh. Thank you all.
Great. Ben, Dan, thank you so much, guys.
Thank you. See you later.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye.